In the previous video, you saw me explain how to answer the summary question. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to answer this question in much more detail. Right here, I have an example from the Cambridge IELTS book number 8, test number 3. And this here is reading passage number 1. We're going to begin by first reading the title of the article so that we have a general understanding of what this article is going to be about. So the article is about striking back at lightning with lasers. Now let's come down to our questions. And let me summarize what you would do at this point. So imagine you are sitting in your test and you have a bunch of different question types for this article. You might have a fill in the blank question, a yes/no question, and perhaps a summary question. Let's say that you get those 3 types of questions. What you would do in such a scenario is you would first come here to the summary question and you're going to mark the keywords for the summary question. Then once you have marked the keywords, you're going to leave it alone, don't do anything with it, and move on to doing the easy questions first. Do the fill in the blank, multiple choice, the yes/no questions. Do those ones first so that while you answer those easy questions, you can give yourself the time and a chance to become familiar with the paragraphs in this article. And that's going to make your job much more easier because once you are finished with those easy questions, then you can return back to these summary questions and you can start off by answering the questions for which you have already located the keywords while you were answering the easy questions first. This is a more time-efficient way to do it, and time is everything when it comes to the IELTS exam because you have to answer the questions in a timely manner. So let's go ahead and start to mark the keywords for these questions. So here we have method, laser, line of ionization, removing electrons, from something. That's probably going to be a noun, from something. Then we have the word laser again. Actually, this whole article is about lasers, right? So lasers is going to be a repetitive keyword. So I'm going to remove it from here as well. And I'm not going to mark this. Directed, control, electrical charges, method. Now method appears here as well, and it seems that this is also another repetitive keyword. It seems that the article is going to be talking about the different types of methods in relation to the lasers. Less dangerous. Less dangerous than using what? That's going to be another noun. As a protection for the lasers, the beams are aimed first. Okay, beams, that's a good keyword. Aimed firstly at something. Again, going to be a noun right there. So the reason that I've started by marking the keywords in the question and not by marking the keywords in the answer choices is because we don't have any proper nouns or numbers down here. So typically, if you have a lot of answer choices, for example, here I only have 4 questions, but I have 9 different answer choices. So it doesn't really make sense to go into my reading article and start to look for all 9 of these answer choices. That's going to be a waste of my time. It's much better in this case to simply look for the keywords from the questions. Also, it's not like I have great keywords here. I mean, some of them look good, but I don't have proper nouns and numbers, things that I would be able to easily and quickly identify. Now, what you would do after marking these keywords is you're going to leave them alone. You would go and do the easy questions first, and then you're going to come back to the summary questions at the end. Okay? Not at the end of the entire reading portion. That would be too late. Rather, you want to come back to these questions at the end of the reading passage. Once you have answered all the different types of questions from the reading passage number 1, then at the end of answering all the easy questions, you would come back to this summary questions. And then once you are done with that, at that point, you would move on to the next reading passage. Here we have reading passage number 1. So you would do the easy questions for reading passage number 1 first, and then you would do the difficult questions like the summary question. And then once you have done the easy questions and the difficult questions for this reading passage, you would then move on to answering the questions for the next reading passage, for reading passage number 2, and you're going to be doing exactly the same thing. Easy first, hard ones, save them for the end. And then you would move on to reading passage number 3 and then repeat the same thing. So at this point, what I would personally do is I would start off by first answering the questions to which I have already located the keywords while I was answering my easy questions. So in this case, let's assume that I already located the word ionization because that's an easy one. And let's say that while I was answering my easy questions, I came across the word ionization. So that's why I'm going to start off by answering question number 7 first. Now let's go ahead and start to look for this keyword ionization. That's a pretty good keyword. And electrons is also a good keyword. So I'm going to be looking for ionization and electrons. Here we go. Let's start to scan. Ionization and electrons. Okay, don't see anything yet. I see electrons over here. That might be where we find our answer, electrons. And actually I also see the word extract. It says extract electrons. Guys, what is extract a synonym for? What do you think? The word extract means to pull out, to remove. So down here it talks about removing electrons. So that is synonym language for extracting electrons. So that whole thing is important. Actually, I can just go ahead and mark that entire thing, extract electrons. And here it mentions ions. Here it mentions line of ionization. So some keywords like ionization, for example, there are going to be certain keywords like ionization and electrons that are not going to have synonym words for them. Because that's the only way that you're going to talk about this idea, because some words are not going to have synonym language. There aren't any good synonyms for certain words like ionization and electrons. So in that case, it can be really helpful to look for these keywords. And that's why we prefer looking for proper nouns and dates and numbers, because there are no synonym words for those keywords. The same thing is true for keywords like ionization and electrons. Electrical charges as well. That's probably going to be another term that is not going to have synonym language. It can, but the chances are very low. You see what I mean? So here I found line of ionization, extract electrons. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to find my answer somewhere over here. So that is probably going to be my matching sentence. Probably going to find my answer somewhere around there. So let's go ahead and read this sentence. I'm going to start up here, since that's where it talks about extracting electrons. The idea began some 20 years ago when high-powered lasers were revealing the ability to extract electrons out of atoms and create ions. Okay, so the question asks us, in this method, a laser is used to create a line of ionization by removing electrons from what? Removing electrons from what? Says right there, remove electrons from, out of is synonym language, from atoms. So the correct answer is going to be atoms. I'm going to put my question number next to it, number 7, since that is where I found my answer. And I'm assuming that these questions will go in order, especially since these questions appear in reading passage number 1. These questions are more likely to go in order. So the answer to that is atoms. The correct answer is going to be the letter B. So put that into your answer sheet and let us move on to the next question. Here it says, this laser is then directed at what? Directed at what? That's what we have to find out. Directed at something. So let's look for that in order to control electrical charges. So let's look for that. Directed and electrical charges. I'm going to be looking for my answer to number 8 after this line, since I'm assuming these questions will go in order. They may not, since they go in order most of the times, but not always. So I'm looking for directed at and electrical charges. Here we go. Okay, here it says pointed. Pointed is synonym language for directed. And down here I also see directed. Directed at what? Directed at a mirror. But I also have to look for the other keyword. Remember, I'm looking for electrical charges, because the laser is directed at something in order to control electrical charges. Okay, that is important. It is in order to control electrical charges. So I'm going to be looking for electrical charges around this area where I found the words directed and pointed. So pointed is over here. I'm looking for electrical charges, something related to that. And I don't really see it here. I see it over here, electric field. That is synonym language for electrical charges. So it has to be related to this, whatever the lasers are pointing towards. So let's read this part over here. Let's read this sentence starting from over here. If a laser could generate a line of ionization, by the way, the word line can be synonym language for to point at or to direct at. Okay, a line in the air all the way up to a storm cloud. This conducting path could be used to guide lightning to Earth before the electric field becomes strong enough to break down the air in an uncontrollable surge. Okay, let us come down to our question here. So the laser is directed at what in order to control electrical charges? Well, it talked about that up here. It's talking about how we have to control electrical charges so that they don't become strong enough to break down the air. See? So we have to do that in order to avoid this negative thing from happening. So what do you think the correct answer is going to be? Do you see it? The correct answer is going to be storm cloud. Over here, storm cloud. Because it tells you if a laser could generate a line of ionization, and by line they mean a direction, a certain direction in which the ionization is generated, then that laser would generate a line of ionization in the air all the way up to a storm cloud, meaning it would be pointed all the way up to a storm cloud or directed at a storm cloud. So that one is really tricky. And it's very easy to get this one wrong, because you might think that it mentions the word directed over here and it mentions pointed over here. Pointed is a much closer synonym than line. I mean, that is very difficult to pin down, to identify. And you might see directed over here. Directed at what? You might think that the answer is mirror, but that would be the wrong answer. So you have to look at not just one piece of information, you have to look at what this entire context is asking you for. Laser is directed at something, but to a certain end. Don't miss out on everything else that follows. That's why I talk about the importance of paying attention to the connecting words. The connecting words, the words that come before and after the blank line, are going to tell you if the answer that you have chosen is in fact the right answer. The answer has to fit like a piece of jigsaw puzzle. So always check in with the connecting words and make sure that you are not ignoring certain information. If I had ignored this part right here about electrical charges, then my answer would have been wrong. I would have put mirror and that would have been the wrong answer. So be very careful about that. And also pay special attention to synonym language. Sometimes it can be very tricky and it can be hidden very well. So you have to really be able to identify it. So the correct answer here for 8 is going to be C, storm clouds. Let us come up here and let's put the question number next to where we found the answer. So number 8, we found it down here. Okay, 7, 8, 9 is probably going to come after this, but we'll find out, I'm not sure. Okay, here we have a continuation of the same sentence. A method which is less dangerous than using what? So it's saying that this method of directing the laser at storm clouds in order to control electrical charges is less dangerous than another method. What is this other method? So we want to find out what is more dangerous than storm clouds, than pointing the lasers at storm clouds. What's more dangerous? So I'm going to be looking for this keyword, less dangerous. That's my main keyword for this part over here. So let's start to scan over here. Probably I'm going to find the answer around here. Less dangerous than. Less dangerous. Okay, it talks about being cheap, portable. It doesn't mention that here. Okay, here it seems to be talking about size, monster, size. I'm also looking for synonym words because when it says less dangerous, I'm going to be looking for keywords like less safe, more harmful, something to do with negative things, something that is negative, harmful, damaging, something like that. So I'm also open to the synonym language as well. And I do not see it here, guys. I have not come across anything having to do with being less dangerous. It's talking about something entirely different down here. So in this case, it seems like our answers are going to be out of order. Now, usually I would not expect this, especially since we are dealing with reading passage number 1. Usually with reading passage number 1, the answers will be pretty much in order. But right here, it seems that we have a question set in which the questions are not in order. So this part seems to be in order. The answer to number 9 is probably going to come before this. So let's look for something having to do with less dangerous. Okay, here I see risk. Now, that is something related to being dangerous, because if something is risky, then that means that it is dangerous. Let's see if I can find anything else related to that. Talks about safely or safety. That could be synonym language. That could be useful for us. Let's see if we see anything else related to dangerous. Talks about protection. I mean, think about what would you really need protection from? From something that is dangerous, right? So that could be where we find our answer. It's possible. And then it says, is not perfectly well behaved. Not well behaved, meaning it is unpredictable. Something that is unpredictable can be dangerous. So it seems that we're going to find our answer around here. And if you look at the title of these paragraphs down here, it says bad behavior. So that tells me immediately that this is going to be talking about something negative, something risky, dangerous. So I'm going to start reading up here. Let's start to read this part over here where it talks about protection, and then maybe we'll read a little bit down here. Let's see if we can find our answer around here. It says, but while rockets are fine for research, they cannot provide the protection from lightning strikes that everyone is looking for. Okay, so they do not protect you from lightning strikes. So that means that they are less safe. Down here it says lightning is not perfectly well behaved. Okay, so it can be risky. So it seems that they are talking about rockets. Rockets. So they're saying rockets are fine for research, but they are less safe. Or in other words, they are more dangerous. That is synonym language. So the answer here to question number 9 is going to be G, rockets. So question number 9, we found the answer to that right over here. I'll mark that for you as well. Mentions that here, that it's less safe. Great. Now let's knock out our final one. Question number 10. It says, as a protection for the lasers. Okay, it talks about protection there again. We just found that keyword. As a protection for the lasers, the beams are aimed firstly at what? Okay, so in order to protect the lasers, the beams have to be aimed at something first. What are the beams first aimed at? What are the beams first aimed at? Let's look for that. I'm looking for beams and aimed. So I found the answer to question number 9 over here. So I'm expecting to find the answer to number 10 after number 9, somewhere down here perhaps. Let's see. So it mentioned the protection up here, but I don't see anything about we are looking for what is the laser first. We are looking for what are the beams first aimed at. And I don't see anything about the beams being aimed at something over here. I don't see that. What are the beams aimed at? Well, over here it talks about being pointed at, being directed at. Those are synonym words. Those are synonym words for being aimed at. That is synonym language, directed at. So perhaps we'll find our answer down here. Let's go ahead and read this. Probably the matching sentence is going to be somewhere around here. Around those two lines, probably. So here we go. The sentence says, to stop the laser itself being struck, it would not be pointed straight at the clouds. Okay, so it would not be aimed directly at the clouds. Instead, it would be directed at a mirror and from there into the sky. Okay, so where would it first be aimed at or directed at? Where would it first be beamed at or aimed at? First, it would be aimed at a mirror, and then from there, it would be aimed into the sky. So the correct answer is going to be mirror. The answer to question number 10 is going to be D, mirrors. Great. So we are now done with this question set. Hope that gives you a better idea of how to go about answering these questions. This was very, very tricky. Very, very tricky. Especially over here, what they did is something really tricky. This is something that doesn't typically happen. And what they did over here is a very dirty trick to try to trick you, because we found the answer to question number 8. Look at that. Question number 8 and question number 9 are all in one sentence. All of that is put together into one sentence. So you might think that since question number 8 and question number 9 appear as one single sentence, that you're going to find the answers for question number 8 and question number 9 next to each other or around each other. But that is not the case. They pulled a trick over here to try to trick you, and what they did is you find the answer to question number 8 down here, but then the answer to question number 9 is not only after the question number 8, not only that, but rather the answer to question number 9 appears in an entirely different location before the answer to number 8 in a different paragraph altogether. How tricky is that? So sometimes they will try to throw a curveball at you and throw a question that is really tricky like this. And you have to be aware that they can do this, and you have to be able to understand synonym language and scan effectively. So this is something that is very rare. It doesn't usually happen, but it can happen. And I'm especially surprised because this is a very tricky question and it appears in reading passage number 1. Usually, reading passage number 1 is rather simple in comparison to the rest of the reading passages. So I'm very surprised that they did this, but yeah, it just goes to show that these questions can be unpredictable sometimes. So I hope you found this video helpful. In the next video, we're going to be looking at another example, practice set number 2. This time, I want to show you an example from reading passage number 3. So I'll see you there.